piece out of 1945, I think, is finally coming to the correct conclusion. Trump wants Russia against China, but can NATO survive it? They're starting to see what I've been seeing now for a while. And I haven't had a really good way of articulating it, but in doing this video, I'm just going to lay it out there. I think his Ukraine strategy has less to do with Ukraine and more to do with China. Let me explain. He wants the fighting to stop. He wants Russia to start doing business again with the West. He wants sanctions to end so they can start selling gas to Europe again, so they can start selling oil around the world again, so they can start feeling the love of the West, for a lack of a better term. And I realize that Europe is never going to be very friendly with this. However, the strategy is much bigger. The strategy is much bigger. The strategy is to pull Russia from China's side in the event of a war with China. You do not want to have China being supplied with Russian minerals, Russian oil, and Russian gas, while the rest of the world is either fighting them or embargoing them. You can't have that. The president has made it clear that the next great adversary, economically or militarily, my hope is just economically, is China. But their military buildup is substantial. On par, their forces are on par with ours when it comes to equipment and technology in many ways. Are they on par with us soldier for soldier? Doubt it. There's so much corruption in the Chinese military right now, it's insane. However, you cannot have them being supplied in the event of a conflict by Russia. You do not want that. So is the goal to make them an ally of the West? Right here in the article, I'm just going to go over a small piece of it. Can Donald Trump pull off a reverse Kissinger with Russia and China throughout the Ukraine war? U.S. President Donald Trump and his Make America Great Again political movement have exhibited a notable sympathy for Russian position in the conflict. MAGA pundits have proffered a number of strategic reasons why the U.S. should facilitate a peace on terms favorable to the Russians. All of these are contestable. But the most coherent to this date is the emerging notion that Russia might become an ally against China. This argument retains the most disturbing element of MAGA argumentation, an uncomfortable willingness to let Russia win the war, or at least to slice off a significant chunk of Ukraine. Well, that's because Russia has won the war. It's not a matter of they're going to win. They are winning. Every day, go to Defense Politics Asia, Military Summary Channel, and you can watch the Russians grind down the Ukrainians day by day, gain territory day by day. That's why the president wants this to end. He gets these reports. He sees these things to a much better extent than you or I ever would in what's available on YouTube with the wonderful channels that I just let you know about. Or Willie, OEM. Willie's one of the best. He realizes the situation, but the grand strategy is becoming clear. It's about pulling Russia from China's side. I don't think you want to make it an ally. I'm not sure you can make Russia an ally. But it's in Russia's best interest that they're a neutral. I think that's really what the goal should be. It's in Russia's best interest that they are a neutral, because China has designs on their territory as well. And those designs haven't just been of talk, they've actually taken place during this Ukraine situation, which is another reason why it's in Russia's best interest to, one, end this war, and two, to become a neutral.
It's no secret that Russia is currently waging a war against Ukraine in an attempt to expand its territory along its western borders with Europe. But what if this war of territorial expansion, rather than giving Russia more defensible space, actually instead ends up creating a domino effect that ultimately causes Russia to lose most of its eastern empire? Believe it or not, it's not only possible, but it may already be happening. And it's because China is now using Russia's own playbook against them. Currently, Russia has managed to occupy Ukrainian territory of around 33,000 square miles, approximately the size of the US state of South Carolina. But if Russia isn't able to successfully end its war soon, they may be putting at risk the entire Siberian territory, which is more than 150 times the size of what they currently occupy in Ukraine, equal to nearly 1.5 times the area of the entire United States, including Alaska and Hawaii. That might seem far-fetched until you take a look at what recently happened here. This is the Great Ussuri Island, a place that might seem unimportant to most of us, but certainly not to Russia or China. For a long time, it has been fiercely contested by both nations, and last year, while Russia was busy and distracted at war with Ukraine, China quietly claimed this small slice of Siberia back into their own sovereign territory. That might at first seem insignificant, because the initial territorial claim was small, just 135 square miles, or around 215 square kilometers. But while the territory may have been small, the geopolitical gesture most certainly was not. Because in many ways, this small slice of land could be the single most strategic and dangerous piece of territory in all of vast Siberia. And if a war were ever to start in the region, it would be extremely likely to start here. It all centers around Khabarovsk, one of the largest cities in Siberia and the largest population center by far in the surrounding area, one of the very few places in Siberia where a significant number of Russians actually live, currently having a population of 630,000, or nearly 10% of the population of the entire Russian Far East. And this massive Siberian city sits right off the eastern tip of Great Ussuri Island. This has always made Russia nervous. Nearly 100 years ago, in 1929, Russia invaded the island and stole it from China for a very specific purpose, to create a buffer zone that would bring Khabarovsk out of the range of any future hostile artillery fire. Ever since that.
Sound familiar? To bring them out of range of any future artillery fire. That sounds exactly what's happening right now along the northern border between Ukraine and Russia. So this is very much correct when it says using Russia's little games against them. And we all know how Russia feels about territory they lose. So like I said, this could be very relevant.
Invasion, China has always wanted the island back, holding that Russia's claims to it are illegal and invalid. China and Russia managed to negotiate a partial solution in 2008, where the nations would split the island in half, but apparently most Chinese still weren't satisfied with that solution. And when Russia invaded Ukraine, China saw their opportunity. The following August, when the Russian military was at a very weak point, China released a new national map, conveniently including the entire Great Ussuri Island as part of their own territory, completely disregarding the Russian half. For the first time in nearly 100 years, the largest city in eastern Siberia was now potentially in artillery range of foreign territory once again. But the nightmare for Russia didn't stop there, because potential artillery fire is actually just one small piece of a much, much larger set of dominoes. Many people know that the Chinese Empire used to be far more vast than it is today, with a huge swath of land now known as Outer Manchuria and what is now modern-day Russian Siberia. This territory was lost to Russia during the mid-1800s, under what China has long considered unfair treaties.
Unfair treaties. Sound familiar there too? How many times has the unfair treaty or the unrecognized border or something like that been used? Taiwan.
And since that time, there have been many speculations that China might one day try to take this territory back. And that's where things get really interesting. You see, the Great Ussuri Island, which China claimed back last year, also happens to control access to the Amur River, a large, navigable river that roughly cuts the famous Outer Manchurian territory in half, and remains one of the few feasible routes for mass transportation in a region with few roads. And if China managed to navigate up this river and place troops on the eastern side of it, they could quickly reclaim and fortify half of Outer Manchuria in a single stroke, fulfilling a long-standing goal of Chinese dynasties going back over 150 years, and paving the way for further territorial gains, potentially going as far as the Ural Mountains. But could it actually happen? And will China actually use Russia's invasion of Ukraine as an opportunity for their own land grabs of Russian territory?
Will it happen? I think it's frankly irrelevant whether it will happen. Russian paranoia at this point is what you would just emphasize the point, is what you would do. Is that You just lost this island a couple of months back. You had agreed in 2008 to divide it, and they went back on that deal. And you can see their expansionism. So it would be in your best interest to not quite be their friend, but be, if there is some kind of a conflict between us and them, you might not want to get involved in any way whatsoever. Because I don't know, again, if you look at that map, it just points out that it'd be able to fortify that. That would also endanger the port of Vladivostok, which is the primary fleet, which is Russia's primary fleet base for Russia's Pacific Fleet. Vladivostok would be cut off from land from Russia. How do you think they respond to that? How do you think Russia responds to that? And you don't have to encourage it, other than to say, they did that. They don't need to be our ally. They just need to be a neutral. And I think that's what the goal is. I think the president is playing a game of 4D chess. I think he's playing 4D chess. And the world is just starting to catch on that his Ukraine policy is less about Ukraine and more about China. Let's bring him back into the Western fold is what he's thinking. Let's allow him to sell gas, oil, coal, minerals to us. That way, if something happens there, they can be a neutral, continue to sell that to us, cut them off. It's big picture. It's big picture. I've thought this for a while, personally. I'm glad to see other places coming onto it. I think this is actually the strategy. I think it's a great strategy. He's playing 4D chess, guys. We're just along for the ride. You got to think big picture. Art of the deal. Outside the box. Cliche number 7, too. Number 7's a good one. With that, I hope you hit the like button, share it with a friend. We'll see you next time.